Hello and welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with the top reports from the global economy. Today's magazine: UN agencies lament lack of international support for Central African Republic. Despite poverty, Bulgarians remain pro-EU. And KCPS Clarity CEO Tal Kainan joins us for a discussion on Israel as a global financial center. First, the headlines. Japan's first quarter growth beat initial estimates as capital expenditure unexpectedly surged. Japan's economy grew an annualized 6.7% in the first quarter, the fastest pace of growth since the third quarter of 2011. Corporate capital spending rose 7.6%, up from a preliminary 4.9% increase. Capital spending is a key focus in Tokyo's campaign to engineer a revival after 2 decades of subpar growth and grinding deflation. The Bank of Japan has aggressively pumped money into markets since last April to encourage banks to lend more to companies, thereby boosting wages and capital spending. Asian stocks touched their highest levels in nearly 3 years on Monday after U.S. jobs data pushed Wall Street to new record highs. MSCI's Asia-Pacific Index reached its highest level since July 2011, while Japan's Nikkei stock average advanced 0.4%. On Friday, the Dow Jones Industrial Average and S&P 500 ended at new records after U.S. job data brought employment back to pre-recession levels. Weekend trade data from China also supported the view of a recovering global economy, with exports gaining steam last month. Colombia's main opposition candidate said he would not sign any new free trade agreement if elected to protect the nation's agricultural sector. Oscar Ivan Zuluaga said if he were elected, he would devote himself to perfecting the trade agreements they already have, including the Pacific Alliance. The basis of peace is that the countryside is profitable and that it's a business, he said. Colombia's leftist FARC rebels declared a ceasefire covering the 3-week presidential election race, which is centered on how to end 5 decades of war with the guerrilla group.
I am not going to sign new free trade agreements. We are settled on this point, but I have to be realistic because I like to speak clearly. It's not possible to renegotiate current agreements.
China and India's foreign ministers met in New Delhi as Prime Minister Narendra Modi pledged to increase foreign investment to help kickstart the economy. China is India's biggest trade partner, with two-way commerce totaling close to $70 billion, and the two sides target annual bilateral trade of $100 billion by 2015. But India's trade deficit with China has soared to over $40 billion since 2001, and Modi must seek greater access to the Chinese market to bridge the deficit. Despite Modi's hardline nationalist reputation, he has welcomed traditional rivals China and Pakistan since his party swept to power last month. Court orders Sao Paulo's subway workers to pay a hefty fine if they continue a strike threatening to disrupt the World Cup's opening game on Thursday. The judges ordered the union to pay a $220,000 fine for every day that the strike continues, up from the $45,000 they had to pay for the strike's first 4 days. The subway workers' union said it would vote whether to continue a strike that has caused traffic chaos in Brazil's biggest city. Union workers already cut an initial demand for a 16.5% wage hike to 12.2%, but employers are offering only 8.7%. The strike over wage demands is the latest social upheaval to hit Brazil, where protesters angry at the World Cup $11 billion bill have staged demonstrations.
It damaged the population who are sacrificed because the subway serves almost 4.8 million passengers a day, and without the workers getting anything.
But with this offer, which gives no room to resolve the impasse, the strike will continue.
IMF head Christine Lagarde admitted her organization got it wrong when warning Britain against its austerity program. Lagarde, in an interview with the BBC, said the IMF thought British Finance Minister George Osborne was too focused on cutting the budget deficit at the expense of growth. In its latest report issued last week, the IMF's tone was broadly much more upbeat than a year ago, when the country seemed to be on the verge of falling back into recession. Lagarde also insisted she is not a candidate for the job of European Commission President.
We underestimated. Look, we got it wrong. We acknowledged it. We were not the only one to get it wrong. We were in good company, actually. Yes. Most forecasters got it wrong, and clearly the confidence building that has resulted from the economic policies adopted by the government has surprised many of us.
As thousands of refugees from the Central African Republic pour into Cameroon, the United Nations Food Aid and Refugee Agencies lament the lack of international support. More in this report by I-24 News reporter Daniel Roth.
Violence in Central African Republic is causing a major refugee crisis. Nearly 230,000 people have been displaced since last September, and the organizations charged with giving aid, the UN's World Food Programme and High Commission for Refugees, say they are grossly underfunded. The two agencies are appealing to donors to help alleviate the pressure of malnourishment and disease, which is widespread amongst those fleeing. The agencies report that currently approximately 2,000 people per week are crossing into Cameroon.
Once they get over to Cameroon, we have no resources to provide the food assistance that's necessary. And so you have people who have hidden in the bush for weeks and months at a time who get into Cameroon who are severely malnourished, and then they find nothing.
Somewhere between 20 and 30% of these refugees are experiencing severe malnutrition, according to the WFP and UNHCR. 15% is enough to call an emergency. The UN Commission says that up to 90,000 refugees have entered Cameroon since December, and the WFP has given rations to nearly 45,000 refugees since May 22nd.
Central African Republic crisis is to a large extent a product of neglect of the international community for decades. And the difficulties that the international community has found now to find the adequate answer, to create the conditions, first of all, to guarantee security, which means a much stronger force than the one that is presently in the country, and then to help rebuild the state and create the conditions for a true reconciliation.
According to the WFP, the Regional Refugee Response Plan, which includes 15 agencies and organizations in 4 countries surrounding Central African Republic, is only 9% funded. As well, UNHCR has only received just over 4 million of the 22.5 million they need.
We have the means, even when there are security challenges, to provide the assistance that is necessary. But what we don't have, as a 100% voluntarily funded organization, are the resources. So we need the assistance from the international community to ensure that we can deliver food even when we must use extraordinary means because of security, because of other access challenges, to reach those who are in need.
The violence between Christian and Muslim militias has left a scar across the region. The majority of the displaced are Muslims. The current crisis has left more than 2 million people in need of humanitarian aid.
In northwest Bulgaria, the most impoverished area of the EU's poorest country, life remains tough despite 7 years of European Union membership. And with 80% of farming subsidies spent on 6% of farmers, small farmers have all but given up hope for respite.
Welcome to Bulgaria's northwest. A rural idyll perhaps, but it's officially the poorest region in the European Union. People here in Razovo say life is even harder than it was 7 years ago, when Bulgaria joined the EU.
We
want to be in Europe, and here we are in Europe. But how come the living standard is so much lower here than over there in the other countries?
In the days of communism, more than 4,000 people used to live in Razovo, employed by huge cooperative farms and factories. Today, the population stands at just 1,000. The young generation have left to find work elsewhere, leaving behind an aging population and dilapidated houses.
They redid the square in Rasovo and it's very nice. Also the children's playground, the library, new paving and a new sewage system.
European money may have paid for the church and schools to get a new lick of paint, but in Rasovo, as in nearby Brusatsi, it's empty communist-era relics that draw the eye.
There's no work and the young people have all run off. Only pensioners like us are left.
Farming is the main economic activity here, but small farmers' hopes for EU aid failed to materialise.
Whoever has a small patch of land rented it to the big tenant farmers. There's 3 of them here, farming all the land in Rasovo.
Government data shows that most of the EU subsidies go to big tenant farmers.
Low investment, low income levels, high joblessness and low employment rates. The situation remains just as bleak. In 2013, 5 out of the 6 or 7 regions in the whole country where employment rates were under 40% of the population, which is a really low level, were in northwestern Bulgaria.
Surveys suggest people are unhappy about progress made by the country since joining the bloc. But for all that, Bulgarians remain one of the most pro-European nations.
There's a lot of talk about Israel as Silicon Valley and as the startup nation, but could this little country also be a global financial center? We're joined now by Tal Kainan, an American-born Israeli entrepreneur, financier, and the founder and CEO of investment management firm KSPS Clarity, for a discussion on Israel's financial potential. Mr. Kainan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you're a leading proponent of Israel as a global financial center. What does it exactly mean, and why do you believe that Israel is well positioned to be a global financial center?
Right, so I think the meanings can be quite broad, and I'm definitely aware of a lot of the kind of criticism of the notion of Israel as a financial center, and that it will be difficult to become a hub of corporations and other entities seeking funding through public markets, as London or New York are. But I think there's a much broader definition of what a financial center is. If you look at Switzerland, which has been a banking hub for generations, people do not go to Switzerland in any big numbers in order to seek financing in public markets. So when I look at Israel, I think the market will determine what Israel ends up being as a financial center. It will happen, at the very least for asset management, which is what we do.
Yeah.
I think there are brokerage firms that are...
is this a good thing, though? I mean, financial centers, like one of the topics that we generally cover here is inequality and rising inequality in the world. Now, being a global financial center presumably will come with growing inequality. Is that a fear we should have?
No, I say we need to address inequality in Israel not by tamping down the top earners in the Israeli economy, but by bringing up the bottom earners in the Israeli economy. I think in general, increasing Israel's export base and its export diversification should definitely be on the economic agenda for Israel. And if you look at the ways we can do that, we're not going to compete on inexpensive labor in Israel against markets like North Africa or some of Asia. We're not going to compete on agricultural land or anything like that. We compete on mines. It's the same model as the technology industry.
Yet part of the theory behind Israel as a global financial center is essentially positioning Israel as, say, the Singapore of the Middle East. I mean, can you kind of give more illustration of that, how that would work? What exactly are the benefits here?
Right. So I think benefit number one is talent density, and it's exactly the attribute that has served the technology industry so spectacularly over the last 20 years in Israel. What we have here is unmatched. I don't think it exists anywhere else in the world. Again, we saw the numbers in technology, and these are two industries that are based entirely on that. I mean, there is nothing else in financial services. So that is, I think, what we bring to the table. When we, as a firm, speak with clients around the world who have nothing to do with Israel and for whom we manage portfolios that also have nothing to do with Israel, the clincher is talent density, the ability to really harness incredible talent.
Does the government recognize this, and does the government also support this concept, this notion of Israel as a global financial center?
Yeah. So I say that the government has done a lot. Financial reforms that were enacted in 2005, I think, were the key to allowing this whole industry to emerge. And then there was the Ariav Commission, on which we served in the years after that, which has done a lot, I think, to promote this. Short answer, it will happen with or without the government at this point. The government has really done the steps it needs to take. It could be accelerated if that kind of became an agenda item. I would say it should be.
Okay, now, so let's look at, for example, a country like Cyprus, which probably until recently, until the financial crisis, might have been perfectly positioned for this kind of situation. Politically, we're not necessarily in a situation where it's, so thinkable for the average Westerner, at least looking at the news, that we would be the hub of the Middle East. Why wouldn't it be Qatar? Why wouldn't it be a different place?
Sure. So I think the short answer is the Cypriot model is very much the Cayman Islands model or the Bermuda model, which is let's create a very tax-light or tax-free regime in order to encourage people to custody capital here or do things like that. That's not at all the Israeli model. I think what Israel does, what Israel can do in financial services is a lot like tech. And for the same reasons you didn't see technology emerge in Cyprus is one example. I think a much more potent example is Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
Or if you look at all the Gulf states that invested billions of dollars in trying to create technology hubs, that didn't really work.
Right.
And I think the real notion is you have a homegrown base of talent density in Israel that you just don't see anywhere else.
Okay, well, one last word because we're going to have to go pretty soon. I mean, is this happening right now, as she said? I mean, Israel is in the process of becoming this financial center?
Right. We don't have an industry per se. There are a few firms, very few firms that actually export investment management services, some who do brokerage.
Right.
Stay tuned.
Okay. Well, Tal Kainan, CEO of KCPS Clarity, thank you very much for joining us at the Economy Show. That takes us to the end of this edition of the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong-Alfares at i24 News. Please continue to watch us and send us your comments and join us again tomorrow for more.